neighbor. Not you, Deborah?
Well, we can both do it. Well, I'm going to come over there and
Theresa's our neighbor. And she's getting more and more to be, what would you call it? Not even a neighbor. A part-time resident.
Honorary guest. Because they never asked me to do anything.
So we asked her to do something.
And so one thing we would like you to know, Lisa, her family's been here for not 4 years like me, or 15 years like Arjuna, but 225 years. Got here in 1783. 1783 is her family. She's Scots-Irish, of course. And she's got 3 kilts because she's descended from 3 different Tartan Scots clans, which is pretty cool, and not typical of this area.
And every man ought to own a kilt. Scottish descent.
And every man ought to kill. And so we just wanted to ask you to please give our friend and neighbor, Thrisa Murphy, a warm welcome.
Y'all have always given me a warm welcome. You have always accepted me with open arms, and I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate y'all for this. First of all, if you don't know much about North Carolina formation, they started at the coast and they just kept making counties and then split counties. And it's very hard to research this area because you have to go like this Rolston County. Before it was Rolston County, it was Polk County. And before then, it was Burke County, and it just keeps going on and on. North Carolina split up in 1710, south and north. For a long time, this was considered Indian lands, and anything past Asheville after that was considered Indian lands. I thought we'd start on Davy Crockett in the early 1800s. Davy Crockett was born on the Nolichucky River, and he was married to Polly Finley. Now, let's go get around to something good. When he was in the Creek Indian Wars under General Andrew Jackson, James Patton of the Bee Tree Settlement in Swannanoa, some of y'all probably know where that is, was mortally wounded at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. And as he lay dying, he asked his friend, Davy Crockett, to take his personal effects back to his wife. He did, and in the process of this, met Elizabeth Patton, the widow. Well, he was married, of course, but his wife died shortly thereafter, so he wanted to date the Patton woman. So she lived in Swannanoa in her father's house in Buncombe County, and she was pleased by his attention, but she didn't want to marry him. So he kept courting her, and in the course of this activity, he was a frequent visitor to Buncombe County. They traveled the road from Asheville to Old Fort by way of Black Mountain. That road in 1816 or so was paved with logs, and they charged a toll to go up it. Davy and his friends felt like this was political shenanigans, and they didn't want to pay the toll. So they made a Davy Crockett bridle trail that ran from Asheville through Minehole Gap, up Old Fort Road, down number 9, down Mount Hebron, and into Old Fort. So the road, as you come up from Old Fort, and you take a right at Crooked Creek and go across Mount Hebron, come out on number 9, that's the original Davy Crockett bridle trail. There's a marker to him on Highway 74. I've seen pictures of it, but I've never seen it. And I got a map of his bridle trail right there. And it's not very well documented, but I've read several things, and that's what I put together, so don't quote me on it. Okay. Let's see. Now, does everybody know where Ray Kirstein lives? No. Ray Kirstein? No. The long straightaway on the way to Black Mountain. There's big cattle fields on the side and a big house over there. You know, right where Hebron comes out, where Davy Crockett's bridle trail came out and turned, and then it turned back at Old Fort Road there, Chestnut Hill Road, and went into Fairview. Where Ray Kirstein lives is where the Murphy Tavern was. It was called the Murphy High Porch Tavern, and it was there in the 1830s. And I figure if it wasn't for the bridle trail, we wouldn't have had a tavern there. William A. Garrison, who Ray Kirstein descended from, was a stagecoach driver. And he married Murphy's daughter, Sarah Emmeline. And you would think these people, or I would have thought, that they didn't do honeymoons and all this. Well, he was a stagecoach driver, and they went to Washington, D.C. on their honeymoon. They came back and lived there. At that time, there was 2 stage roads from Morganton to Asheville, one up Mill Creek and Ridgecrest to Asheville. The old road that I was talking was paved in logs, and it was tolled. Then there was the Crooked Creek through Broad River, which went to Fairview. Most of the roads around here followed buffalo trails, because, you know, there used to be buffaloes in North Carolina in the 15 and 16. About Ray's grandfather, great-grandfather. After the Civil War, people in this area made legal liquor for the government. The government paid them to make liquor because there wasn't very many distilleries in the United States. W.A. Garrison, who Ray Kirstein descended from, made liquor for the government. And this is how they taxed you on it. A gauger would come by, and he would check the alcohol content of the mash. And the more alcohol you had, the more taxes you had to pay. Well, the taxes were so high that people that made liquor couldn't make much money on it. In fact, one of my ancestors got busted for like 50 gallon barrels of untaxed white liquor in his basement. That's another story. It says Hampton, Featherstone, Asheville, North Carolina. But they'd bring the bung back, they'd send the bung back by the stagecoach driver so they could use the bung again, so they wouldn't have to pay taxes on their liquor. Okay, also about the Murphy Tavern, we're going to get on to the Elliots in a minute. About the Murphy Tavern, W.A.B. Murphy was James' son. He was my fourth great-grandpa. He drove a stagecoach and got a woman in Asheville pregnant, which is where I descended from. That's all we know about her. We know her last name's Fagan, that's all we know. But he was married for a short time to Temperance Ledbetter. And Temperance must have died shortly after the marriage because we don't find anything else about her. Her brother got Zilla Owenby pregnant. We have a picture of her. Girl, where's she at? She's right here. This is Granny Duck Murphy. He got her pregnant. He didn't want to marry her, so he paid Murphy $10 to marry her. Oh my God! He paid his brother-in-law $10 to marry her. He kept driving the stagecoach. She lived in his house. He came back after he finished driving the stagecoach and built a store. And they got friendly and started living together and had 5 more kids after that. And if you're interested, I'll show you her daddy's will. It's good, it's rich. The daughter that Zilla had was Mary Kate Murphy, but of course she was a Ledbetter. She married Alfred Anderson Dalton, and that's where the Dalton gang came from. I have a whole story about that too, but we ain't got time for that. Okay, and I have the wagon road that ran through here. This little map here is the wagon road as it came by, and whenever you go by Ray Kirstein's, right past his barn, if you look to the right, you can see the roadbed, the old roadbed. And if you're standing on my mom and dad's front porch when it snows, if you look over there on the road, you can see the old roadbed too. It's still there because it ran right down Rosie Branch and right down through Cedar Creek because there was no road at this time from here to Old Fort because the county seat was Rutherford because McDowell County wasn't incorporated until 1843. So, okay. Now, okay, and there's a letter up there from Carrie and Andy too about W.A.B. Murphy. It's pretty rich. You might want to read it. The Elliots. Sam Elliott was probably one of the Elliots from Virginia who were Scotch-Irish. They came here in 1717. They moved down the Great Philadelphia Wagon Road to Anson County, North Carolina around 1755, but everything west of Lake Salisbury was Anson County at that time. Sam Elliott Sr. was born in 1783, died 1855. He's buried on his own land that Grey Rock owns now. Right past the entrance. To the left of the entrance, he's buried right up there on the hill. He purchased 100 acres of land in the lower tract and 148 acres in the upper tract from the state of North Carolina. Not from the King of England, from the state of North Carolina. At $5 for 100 acres. There was 75 acres of speculation land. Companies used to buy land speculating that it was going to go up and they could make a big profit on it. So he bought 75 acres of speculation land between these tracts for 12.5 cents an acre. So he had 323 acres. When Sam died, all his land was auctioned off and his great-great-grandson, Roscoe Gilbert, bought it. And that is the land that's actually below our farm. Okay, and for y'all that don't know, the Elliott farm is still past here, past the gate. That's my family's land. Let's see. Now, They had 13 kids. We're only going to talk about 3 of them. First of all, Johnson, who was born in 1818, married Martha Whiteside. And I think these are the people, we're going to talk about an earthquake in a minute, these are the people I think they stayed with. They lived, from what I've been told, where the Earthaven Council Hall is now. They lived here. Their son, the reason we talked about them anyway, their son, John D. Elliott, was born in 1858, married Rosie. And that's who lived up there in the house where the chimneys were. And that's why it's named Rosie Branch. Okay. Now, Noah Elliott, son of Sam, he married a Taylor, and his sister also married a Taylor. The Taylors were big plantation owners in Rolston County, had lots of slaves, lots of land, big farming thing. I believe, and I can't prove this, I don't have any proof of this, that Taylor Creek was named after Noah's wife, who was a Taylor, and her brother. But I don't know that for sure. But Noah apparently bought this land. He bought it sometime before 1850 because it's in the McDowell County records, because the Murphy land butted up to the Elliott land, which butted up to the Nanny land, because, you know, in those days they bought 640 acres, which was 1 square mile. So, you know, that's a long way away. So you married the people that were close to you. Okay, the branch that runs into Camp Elliott is the Noah branch, and I believe that was named after Noah Elliott because that's where he lived. But no, I can't prove that, but that's what I would assume. What about you, Farmer? Would you assume that?
That sounds reasonable.
Thank you. Okay, Noah Elliott owned this land right here. Okay, he owned this land. He owned all the way up from behind Eddie's store. He owned the camp, and I know he owned this. Now, this is how Earthaven, the land came to Earthaven. Noah's daughter, Rhoda, married Robert Davis, and I got pictures up here over there. The whole family's over there on the left. She married Robert A. Davis. They had 3 kids. Their kids were named Sarah, Mary, Martha, and William. Tommy and Sarah were never married, and they lived in a house, and I have a picture of it here where the A&A or medicine wheel is at. The house is there. They must have left their land to their sister Mary, who married Reverend T.K. Brown. T.K. Brown was the first Baptist minister of the First Baptist Church in Black Mountain. So they were pretty well to do, and if you'll see the pictures up here of her, she looks better to do than the rest of the family. But like I said, I don't know. I know he had to have purchased this land because it wasn't part of Sam's land. And I would think that in the will, when his wife, in his wife's father's will, he was not left any, they were not left slaves, they were not left money. So I would say a lot of the men in those days would give their daughters money or give them land or whatever. And since she wasn't left anything, I would say he gave them money to purchase this land or purchase it for them, because she was not mentioned in the will, and she should have been. Because usually in those days, if you were left out of the will, they'd leave you $1. Just because, in fact, Zilla got left $1, but anyway. Okay. Tommy and Sarah Davis, who lived here, and their sister was married to the preacher. Her son became the high sheriff of Buncombe County. His name was Lawrence Brown. He was my grandpa Julius Elliott's first cousin. Now, when they made white liquor down here, Grandpa never got caught. Well, he kind of did. It's another story. We'll get to that. But every week, Sheriff Lawrence Brown would bring his sister down here to the A&A to visit his sisters. I mean, her sisters. And so every week, they said the Buncombe County Sheriff's car would come down here, and then he would stay until she had her visit, and then he would take her back to Black Mountain. Lawrence Brown had a big reputation for catching white liquor makers. That was his big thing. He was a big revenuer type. But like I said, it helps to be in the family. I asked Patricia about this, and Shirley Nanny Moffett, who's probably 97 now, and I saw her just a few years ago. She said when she was a little girl, and she was raised up there right where I am, that Sarah Davis had made a walkway by taking Vicks salve, the blue glass bottles, turning them upside down, and made a walkway into her house. And she said when she saw that, she was about 7, and she said it was the most beautiful thing she had ever saw. And I asked Patricia, I said, do you find blue glass here? She said, oh, all the time. I said, well, this is why.
We do.
Wow. Yeah, but that's why, because she had a walkway. And I thought, man, that is cool. And we're going to talk, I'm just going to throw this in because to let you know how it was in those days. Below the farm there was some sawmills and sash mills, but that was right before 1916. But Fate Elliott died in the J patch, and I know you don't know what it is. But they had walked down, him and Julius, his brother, had a bushel of corn. And so to get their corn ground, they walked down to Three Creeks Development, got it ground up at George Logan, who was a black man, his mill down there, and it's where Three Creeks Development is now.
Was a water mill on Taylor's Creek below the gorge there, coming down the Three Creeks?
Huh?
It was a water mill, grist mill?
Oh, I'm getting to that.
All right.
Hang on. But so that's how far they had to walk with a bushel of corn to get it ground and come back. Well, Fate fell over dead that day in the J patch. That's when we wrote about him. But I just wanted you to know how far they had to walk with a bushel of corn to get it ground in those days. Because this was after 1916 flood, and that's what changed. I'll tell you about that. Camp Elliott was given to the YMCA by, okay, there was Noah. And Noah had a son,
What you're calling Camp Elliott is Stone Mountain School.
yeah, sorry.
And that was, is that, whose cabin is out in Settlers Creek? Or where we're at?
Where's Settlers Creek?
Where we're at.
Her house.
That,
Oh, I believe that's Marcus's. I think that's Marcus Elliott's house, is what that was. Marcus was the son of, I really do know this stuff. Okay, there was Noah. And Noah had Marcus. Marcus died in 1902. His wife, Minnie, they call her Mint, Granny Mint, and her sons gave the land that is now Camp Elliott Stone Mountain School to them, to the YMCA, and that's why it's out of the family, because they gave it to them. I actually have a picture of them, but I didn't bring it, where they're all sitting there today in front of the cabin down there where they gave the land away. Becky and Larry's house, y'all know Becky and Larry? Did you come in? Becky and Larry's house also came down through the Elliott's because of Evie Elliott, okay, which was another one of Minnie and Marcus's daughters. So that was also Elliott property, and we call it in the family the Hall House because after, Evie married Luther Hall, and so that's why we always call it the Hall House.